She was a tiny alien warrior but needed a human's strength to survive. The sky was dark with smoke, and the ground shook with the sound of distant explosions. The air smelled of burning metal, and the wind carried ash like snow. Jack moved carefully through the ruined battlefield, his boots crunching on broken glass and twisted wires. His rifle hung at his side, ready but silent. Every shadow looked dangerous, every sound made his heart beat faster. He had been separated from his unit hours ago. The last thing he heard from them was a call for retreat, but he was too far behind to catch up. Now, he was alone, surrounded by wrecked machines and the bodies of soldiers, human and alien alike. The war had been brutal, and this place was one of its worst battles. Then, through the crackling of small fires, he heard something, a faint sound, almost like a whisper, but sharper. It wasn't words he could understand, but it was definitely a voice, weak but angry. Jack froze, listening. The sound came again. This time clearer. It was a cry for help, or maybe a warning. He moved slowly, keeping low, stepping over the remains of a burnt-out vehicle. His eyes scanned the wreckage until he saw movement. There, under the broken arm of a huge alien mech, was someone, no, something, a small figure, armored in cracked silver plates. One arm pinned under heavy metal, her legs twisted awkwardly. She was breathing fast, eyes darting around like a trapped animal. She was an alien, but unlike the huge warriors he had seen before, she was small, barely up to his chest in height. Her face was partly hidden behind a damaged helmet, but her bright golden eyes burned with defiance. She clutched a broken blade in her free hand, holding it up at him even though her arm trembled. "Stay back, human," she hissed in a language he didn't understand, but the tone was clear enough. She was warning him, even though she was trapped. Jack raised his hand slowly, showing he wasn't going to attack. "Easy," he said softly. His voice was calm, even though his pulse was racing. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't lower the blade. Her breathing grew heavier, and her gaze kept flicking past him, as if she expected more danger to come at any moment. Jack glanced around and saw why, in the distance. Small scout drones were gliding through the air, their red eyes scanning the battlefield. If they found her, she'd be dead, and if they saw him helping her, he would be too. He stepped closer, testing her reaction. She flinched, but didn't strike. The mech's metal arm was heavy, but Jack had shifted things like this before. He crouched beside her, gripping the twisted metal. She muttered something sharp in her own tongue, probably telling him to go away, but he ignored it. His muscles strained, and with a grunt, he lifted the metal just enough for her to slide free. She gasped in pain as she pulled her arm out. Her armor was cracked at the shoulder, and a deep burn marked her side. She tried to stand, but her leg gave out instantly. She fell against him, and for a second, their eyes met. Her gaze was still full of fire, but there was something else now. Surprise, maybe even confusion. Jack could already hear the faint hum of the drones getting closer. He didn't have time to explain. He pulled her arm over his shoulder, lifting her weight. She was light, almost too light for a warrior, but every step she took made her wince. "Let go," she growled, this time in broken human speech. Her voice was rough but young. "I walk. You can't," Jack replied. Firmly, he kept moving, stepping over rubble, keeping to the shadows. His eyes scanned for cover, somewhere they could hide until the drones passed. The alien tried to push away from him, but her strength was fading fast. Her breathing was shallow, and her grip on the broken blade loosened. Still, she didn't ask for help, not even once. Jack spotted a collapsed wall ahead with a small gap. Under it, he dragged her inside just as the red light of a drone passed over the rubble. Both of them stayed still, hardly breathing. The drone's light paused for a second, then moved away. When the danger passed, she shoved herself away from him, leaning against the wall. Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" she asked. The word was clear, sharp, full of suspicion. Jack looked at her for a moment. He could have said, "Because it's the right thing to do," or "Because I don't leave people behind." But instead, he just said, "Because you're still alive." She didn't reply, but she didn't try to run either. Her gaze dropped for a second, then returned to his face. The battlefield was still dangerous. The drones were still hunting. But something had changed in that moment. She was still a tiny alien warrior, and he was still a human soldier, alone in enemy territory. But now, their survival might depend on each other, and neither of them liked that. Jack knew the moment they left that hiding place, the danger would return. The smoke was thicker now, and the sky above flashed with silent bursts of light from distant fighting. He kept his steps careful, holding the alien steady, even though she kept trying to pull away. She was stubborn, her small frame tense as if any moment she might shove him to the ground and vanish. Her armor rattled softly with every movement, and now that he was closer, he noticed the details, faded scratches, deep dents, marks of many battles fought before this one. She wasn't just some soldier. She was experienced, maybe even important among her kind. Her golden eyes watched everything, never resting, always calculating. "You don't have to help," she muttered in broken human speech, her voice low but edged with pride. "You're kind, slow, fragile. Get in way." Jack almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because, even bleeding and limping, she still found the energy to insult him. "You're welcome," he said dryly, but kept his focus ahead. They moved through the maze of wreckage, past the bodies of soldiers neither of them dared to look at for long. In the distance, the hum of engines grew louder. Jack knew that meant patrols were sweeping closer. If they were caught, neither human nor alien side would hesitate to shoot. He scanned the ground ahead, looking for paths less exposed, weaving them between piles of collapsed steel and melted armor. She hissed under her breath when he guided her into a narrow gap between two destroyed vehicles. Her legs scraped metal, and she winced but didn't cry out. She moved with a strange kind of discipline. Pain didn't slow her steps, only her balance. Jack realized she had been trained to fight long past the point a human soldier would have collapsed. As they crossed an open stretch, a shadow fell over them. Jack grabbed her and pulled her behind a pile of debris, just as a small recon drone descended from above. It hovered, scanning, its thin mechanical arms twitching. Jack held his breath, one hand covering her shoulder to keep her still. She didn't resist this time. They waited, every second stretching longer than the last, until finally the drone drifted away. When he let her go, she didn't move at first, just looked at him in silence. There was a flicker in her eyes, not trust, but something closer to curiosity. They kept moving until they reached what looked like the remains of an alien outpost. The walls were scorched black, half collapsed, the floor littered with shattered equipment. Jack paused, scanning for movement. The place seemed abandoned, but he knew better than to believe appearances. She stepped ahead of him, surprising him with her sudden burst of speed. She crouched beside a broken console, her small fingers tapping at strange glowing symbols on its cracked screen. Jack watched her work, realizing for the first time that she was more than just a fighter. She was reading enemy reports, flipping through them faster than he could follow. Finally, she stopped and looked at him. "Not safe here," she said. "Enemy. Closing from south. They block escape path soon." Jack didn't know how she could be so certain, but the urgency in her voice was real. They needed to move, yet every path ahead seemed worse than the last. "You know another way?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I know, but dangerous. You follow, you die." Jack almost smiled. "If I don't follow, I die anyway." She gave him a sharp look, then turned and limped toward the far side of the ruined outpost. Her steps were quicker now, as if she had made a choice she didn't like, but couldn't avoid. Jack followed, and as they disappeared into the smoke, the sounds of distant engines grew louder. A storm of danger was closing in, and whatever path she had chosen, it was about to test them both. in ways neither expected. The air grew colder as they left the ruins behind. Each step took them deeper into a part of the battlefield Jack hadn't seen before. The ground was uneven, scattered with alien metal shards that glowed faintly under the dim sky. The alien warrior moved quickly, despite her limp, her small frame darting between jagged wreckage with the instinct of someone who had survived here before. Jack kept close, scanning the shadows. He noticed how she never walked in a straight line, always weaving, always keeping cover between them and the open sky. It wasn't random. She was avoiding something. "What's out here?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer at first. Her golden eyes flicked to the side as they passed the husk of a massive alien walker. Its legs twisted like broken bones. "Finally," she said, "not just soldiers, machines, hunters." Her voice was flat, but he caught the faint tightening in her tone. They crossed a ridge of crumbled stone and metal, and Jack saw what she meant, down in the shallow valley ahead. Strange, insect-like machines moved with eerie silence. Their thin limbs clicked softly as they searched the wreckage, their heads sweeping back and forth like predators sniffing for prey. Jack crouched low. "Scouts," he whispered. "No," she replied, her eyes fixed on them. "Hunters. They follow scent, sound, heat. Never stop until kill." Jack's grip tightened on his rifle. They couldn't go back, and the only way forward was right through the edges of the hunter's search pattern. She turned to him, her face half hidden in the shadow of her cracked helmet. "You quiet. You live," she said simply. They moved like ghosts, slow and careful, Jack copying her movements exactly. One wrong step sent a shard of metal clinking. Under his boot, the nearest hunter froze, its head swiveling. A beam of pale light cut across the ground. Jack's muscles locked. He didn't even breathe. The alien warrior stayed perfectly still, not even blinking. The hunter lingered, its light brushing over the wreckage just a few meters from them. Then, without warning, it leaped onto a pile of debris and began tearing it apart. The sound was sharp, grinding, almost like bones breaking. Jack's pulse hammered in his ears. When the machine finally moved on, she gave him a short glance, not relief, but a signal to keep going. They reached the far side of the valley, climbing over a collapsed section of alien trench. Once they were clear, Jack let out the breath he'd been holding. "You've done this before?" he said quietly. "Too many times," she answered, but her gaze stayed forward. "Next part harder." Jack frowned. "Harder than that." She didn't look at him, just kept walking, and after a moment, he realized she wasn't talking about the machines anymore. Whatever was ahead wasn't just dangerous, it was something she didn't even want to describe. That worried him, more than the hunters ever could. The ground beneath them began to change, shifting from shattered metal and ash to smooth, black stone that glistened faintly under the dim light. It looked unnatural, like it had been melted into shape rather than formed by nature. Jack's boots made a dull echo with every step, and that sound alone put him on edge. The alien warrior slowed, her gaze sweeping the empty space ahead. The air felt heavier here, almost too still. Jack noticed she kept her hand close to the hilt of her broken blade, even though it was barely more than a shard of metal now. "What is this place?" Jack asked, in a low voice. She hesitated before answering. "Old ground." "Forbidden." She glanced at him, as if deciding whether to say more. "Not built for humans, not safe for me." They came to a narrow passage between two towering slabs of black stone. The space was just wide enough for one person to pass at a time. She motioned for Jack to follow, stepping lightly over cracks in the ground as if certain they hid something dangerous. Halfway through, Jack caught sight of small, smooth orbs embedded in the walls. Each one glowed faintly, pulsing in a slow rhythm. At first, he thought they were lights, but then one of them turned, revealing a pupil-like slit eyes. She whispered sharply, "Don't touch wall, don't stop." Jack felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. He moved exactly as she did, avoiding the cracks, keeping his eyes forward. The stone passage seemed to stretch longer than it should, the air pressing against his chest with every step. When they finally emerged on the other side, Jack saw a massive alien structure ahead, part buried under the battlefield's ruins. Its surface was carved with symbols that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. "This is where," he began, but she cut him off, her voice tight. "Trap place. My people built long ago. No one come back." Before Jack could reply, the ground beneath them gave a sudden metallic groan. A thin line of red light appeared in a perfect circle under their feet, and with a sharp hiss, the floor split apart, dropping them both into darkness. They landed hard, dust filling the air. Jack coughed and tried to stand, but before he could, strange shapes moved in the shadows around them. Dozens of them, small and fast, crawling along the walls and ceiling. With clicking claws, the alien warrior rose beside him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "We move now," she said, "or we die here." And from the sound closing in, Jack knew she wasn't exaggerating. The darkness was alive with movement. The clicking of claws echoed in every direction, sharp and uneven, like hundreds of tiny knives tapping on glass. Jack's eyes adjusted just enough to see quick flashes of pale limbs darting between shadows. The air smelled damp and metallic, as if the place hadn't been opened in years. The alien warrior wasted no time. She darted forward, her small form weaving between broken pillars and jagged fragments of stone. Jack followed, his footsteps heavier, louder. Every sound he made drew more clicks from the dark, and the shapes above began to follow. A sharp hiss sliced through the air. One of the creatures dropped from the ceiling, landing just behind Jack. He spun and fired a burst from his rifle, the muzzle flash revealing a nightmarish shape, a long, eel-like head with needle teeth. Its thin body covered in slick armor plates. It shrieked and collapsed, twitching, but the sound only brought more, faster. She shouted, her voice echoing strangely in the cavern. They sprinted through a twisting tunnel, the walls narrowing until Jack had to turn sideways to fit. The warrior ahead moved with impossible speed for her size. Even with her injuries, she slid under a low arch, then turned sharply left. Jack followed, and froze. The floor ahead was covered in thin, metallic strands, almost invisible until his boot caught one and made it hum. The alien spun toward him, eyes wide. "Don't touch," she hissed. From the walls, more of the creatures began to pour out, crawling over each other in a frenzy. Their bodies moved like liquid shadow, each one hissing and snapping. Jack backed up, heart pounding. "We're trapped," he muttered. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled something small from her armor, a curved shard of crystal that pulsed with a soft blue glow. She tossed it to the ground, and the air around them vibrated. The creatures halted for a split second, their limbs twitching as if the light hurt them. "That won't last," she said, her voice tight. "We run now." They leaped over the glowing shard and pushed deeper into the tunnels. The clicking returned, faster now, chasing them through the dark. Jack didn't know how far they had to go, or what was ahead, but he understood one thing. Whatever waited at the end of this escape would decide if they lived or died. The tunnel began to widen, and for the first time since they had fallen into this place, Jack could see a faint glow ahead, not the sharp blue of the crystal the alien had thrown, but a pale, natural light that seemed to spill in from somewhere above. It was a sign of an exit, but also a warning. Open space meant they could be seen. The alien warrior slowed just enough to glance back at him, her breathing heavy but steady. "Almost there," she said, though her tone carried no relief. As they reached the mouth of the cavern, Jack understood why. The light came from a gaping hole in the ceiling far above, but between them and that escape was a massive open chamber. In the center stood an ancient alien mechanism, a ring of black stone and metal, humming faintly. The walls around it were alive with movement, dozens of the ill-like creatures clinging to the surface, their eyes glinting in the light. "They guard it," Jack said quietly. She nodded, Only way out is through. Before he could respond, a deep, resonating click echoed from the far side of the chamber. A larger shape emerged from the shadows twice the size of the others, its armor gleaming, weightly. Its movements were slower, deliberate, as if it knew they couldn't escape. Jack checked his ammo, counting silently in his head. He didn't have enough bullets to take them all down. "We can't fight them all," he said. "We don't," she replied, pointing to the ring. "We reach center, activate gate, leave before they close in." She sprinted first, weaving between piles of rubble. Jack followed, gunfire barking as he picked off the closest creatures. Their shrieks filled the chamber, the larger one letting out a roar that rattled his chest. The alien reached the base of the ring and pressed her small hands against a carved panel. Strange symbols lit up under her touch. The air shimmered as the center of the ring began to swirl with shifting light, but before it could stabilize, the huge creature lunged toward her. Jack didn't think. He ran straight into its path, slamming into its side with all his weight. The impact knocked them both into the ground, claws scraping at his armor. He fired point blank into its face, the blasts lighting the chamber in quick flashes. The alien warrior shouted his name, but he couldn't look back. The ring behind her was coming alive, the light growing brighter. The creatures were closing in from all sides, and Jack knew the only way she was getting out was if he held the line. The roar of the massive creature shook the chamber, dust and fragments of stone falling from the high ceiling. Jack's ears rang, but he stayed locked on its glowing eyes, forcing it back with short, brutal bursts from his rifle. Every shot bought the alien warrior a few more seconds at the gate. The smaller creatures swarmed along the walls, pouring toward them in a tide of slick, snapping bodies. Jack planted himself between the swarm and the ring, firing until the rifle clicked. Empty. He tossed it aside and pulled his combat knife. The huge predator lunged again, its jaws snapping so close he felt the hot, foul air of its breath. Jack ducked under it, slashing deep into the softer plates beneath its jaw. Black fluid sprayed across his arm, and the beast screamed, rearing. Back behind him, the alien shouted something in her own language, urgent, desperate. He risked a glance, and saw the center of the ring was now a swirling storm of light, the gateway fully active. She was holding it open with both hands, but her small frame shook under the force of it. "Jack," she yelled in broken human speech. "Now, jump." He didn't move. Not yet. The creatures were almost on her. Crawling over the base of the ring, he charged forward, cutting them down one after another, kicking their bodies away before they could latch onto her. The big one lunged from behind, but Jack grabbed a shard of broken metal from the floor and drove it deep into the beast's eye. It thrashed violently, slamming him against the ground. His vision blurred, but he pushed himself up, grabbed her arm, and without another thought, they leaped into the light together. The world turned inside out, sound vanishing into a dull, heavy silence. Then they tumbled onto cold ground under a night sky filled with strange constellations. Jack lay on his back, chest heaving, and turned to look at her. She was watching him, golden eyes glowing faintly. "You stayed," she said quietly, as if she couldn't believe it. He gave a tired smile. "Told you I wasn't leaving you behind." She didn't smile back, but she didn't look away either. And in that moment, he realized they had crossed more than just a battlefield together. They had crossed the line between strangers and something far more dangerous to both their worlds.